Hello, everyone. Dr. Victoria Skirbo here, speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. So today is Friday the 13th here in Massachusetts, and we have Mars turning direct today. And yesterday we had a Pluto Jupiter conjunction. And coming this weekend, we have a new moon in Scorpio, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So I thought we could take a look at the new moon in Scorpio, and then perhaps we can pull some cards on it if there's time. So let's take a look. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we can take a look at this new moon. Now, of course, new moons are always times of new beginnings, and depending on the theme of the sign that is associated with the new moon, that informs what type of energy is beginning. And of course, every month we have, we actually have 13 new moons in a year. And so generally 13 times a year, we have an opportunity within a certain sign to have a new beginning. Now, this, of course, new moon is in Scorpio. The sun is in Scorpio right now. And if we look at this chart that I have in front of me, we can see that the sun and the moon are at 24 degrees of Scorpio. Now, this is a natural chart with zero Aries at the ascendant. I did erect this chart for Washington, D.C. We don't necessarily going to talk about that right up front. We can look at that chart as well. And so we see that we have an ascendant here. And in the case of Washington, D.C., the ascendant is at 2 degrees of Virgo. But let's put that aside for now, because what I want to talk about is I want to talk about the energy of this new moon. Now, this is a very powerful new moon. And if I were to do, or if I had done, or perhaps I have done, because I don't always remember everything I do, other new moon reports, I probably started the new moon report with, this is a very powerful new moon. That has been the case throughout of 2020, which is probably not a surprise to most people, because 2020 has really been a extraordinarily powerful and transformational year. Many people have lives have changed dramatically and drastically because of not just because of the what is going on in 2020. You know, with a raging pandemic that is circling the globe. I mean, that's certainly something. And then, of course, we had some very important aspects, important conjunctions, the ending and the start of new cycles. Most of those happened in January, right at the beginning of the year. We had Pluto and Saturn that came together after 38 years. The last time they had been together was in the sign of Libra, and that was in 1982. And then, of course, we have the Saturn-Pluto, Pluto-Jupiter conjunctions, of which we've had 3. Yesterday, we had the last one of those. Each time, the first time was in March. The second time was at the end of June, and now we had it yesterday. I guess that could be considered mid-November. And in each one of those, we've had another wave of the COVID-19. And this one will be the largest wave. Unfortunately, probably the most destructive wave. And certainly we're going to see that in my country, in the United States, mainly because people chose not to follow the science. So, and then at the end of this year, so not all the conjunctions have actually occurred, but at the end of this year, on the 21st of December, which is the longest night and the shortest day, here in the Northern Hemisphere, or the longest day and shortest night in the Southern Hemisphere. Jupiter and Saturn will be making a conjunction for the first time in 20 years. And last time that occurred in the sign of Taurus, and that was in 2000. And so now in 2020, 20 years later, we have another conjunction, and this one occurs in the first degree of Aquarius. This starts a cycle of these 20-year conjunctions, considered generational cycles, that will be happening in air. Previous to this, for 150 or maybe 200 years, it had been in Earth. And so what society is structured on, what society perhaps values, is changing and shifting. So, and we will see that begin in December, and then proceed through 2021. All right, so let's talk about this new moon. So here we have the new moon at 24 degrees of Scorpio. We have Mars here in the first house, and Mars has just turned direct. So it is it's stationed today. And this new moon is occurring at 7:04 a.m. On the east coast of the US. So we have Mars just stationing direct, which makes it very powerful. It's almost standing still at this time. Mars stops its retrograde motion and then stations and then starts to move forward. But initially it starts to move forward very slowly. So there's a lot of tension that's been built up in that Mars. And Mars is in the sign of its rulership. And the last time, I believe that it was in the sign of its rulership when it was retrograde, might have been 1980, so 40 years ago. I think it was like 40 years ago, 1980. God, it's hard to believe that 1980 was 40 years ago. Makes me feel old. Goodness gracious. Let's get over that. So we are really living through a time of real shifting and real changing. And so one of the things I want to say is, at a certain point, you just have to let it go and let it happen. And you don't really have control over this stuff. And so we have to find a way of focusing ourselves inwardly, following our own self, our own heart, as it were. And that can be difficult because a lot of people live in a way that they feel others expect of them, as opposed to being aligned with what their own soul and their heart says. And one of the things that 2020 has been able to do for a lot of people is to quiet things down to a certain extent, so they actually have to go there. Excuse me. Okay. Let's see. All right, so I want to look at the Sabian symbol for 24 degrees of for this new moon. So okay, 24 degrees of Scorpio. When you're looking at Sabian symbols, if you happen to have this book, or you can go to mindfire.org, I think it is, on the internet, and the whole book is up there, so you can actually use that as a reference, because this book is out of print. So, as far as I know, after having heard an inspired individual deliver his Sermon on the Mount, crowds are returning home. The need to incorporate inspiring experiences and teachings into everyday living. And the challenge is the challenge to transformation. And so, many of us have had as much as we've had challenging times this year, we've also had some very inspiring times. I'm thinking back in March for me, when Bernie Sanders had just won Nevada, and he made this beautiful speech about visualizing a society based on love and compassion. It was a beautiful, beautiful speech. Um, I heard Kamala Harris have a rousing speech. She was down in Texas, that brought tears to my eyes. I really like Kamala Harris, but I didn't think she could inspire me the way that she did. Listening to Barack Obama's speech was very inspiring, and listening to Joe Biden's speech, his acceptance speech, when he was the projected winner of the presidential election, all very inspiring. And so, how do you take these inspirational moments that you have? And it doesn't have to be political inspiration, for sure. It could be perhaps you listen to a spiritual advisor, or you listen to a particularly rousing um, lecture on something that just sort of opens you up in ways that giving you hope, giving you a vision, right? How do you bring that to your everyday life? How do you institute that in your everyday life? And that's what particular this particular new moon symbol is talking about. So, of course, Scorpio is the sign associated with transformation. It is the sign where the personality is required to surrender to the soul. Scorpio is symbolic of the soul. In evolutionary astrology, which is a type of astrology that I practice, we look to Pluto. Uh, Pluto as symbolic of the soul. And right now we have Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. Right, that was the year that Barack Obama won the presidency of the United States. It was also the year that we had the financial meltdown and crisis, very shortly after Pluto moved into Capricorn. Capricorn is the structures of power. It's the structures of banking, large institutions, schools, corporations, government structures, hierarchical structures, the chain of command kind of idea. And with Pluto in there, Pluto is taking that and sort of throwing it, well, it's not really throwing it up in the air. That's more of a Uranus thing, although we had a lot of Uranus energy along with Pluto between 2012 to 2015, when we had 7 exact squares of those two planets. The last time those two planets were in such a dynamic relationship was in 1965 and 1966. So we can see these great, like, sort of shifts that are going on in the world if we look at the astrology of the times, right? So we have Pluto in Capricorn, and it is in a very tight sextile to the new moon. The new moon is also in an even tighter sextile to Jupiter, and a tight sextile to Pallas, and a wider sextile. I would still consider it sextile, even though it's kind of wide, to Saturn. So this new moon in Scorpio, the sign of transformation and surrender, is lined up in these sextiles with all of these Capricorn planets. And all of these have been in Capricorn all year, except for a moment in time when Saturn went into Aquarius, did a little visit into Aquarius, and then backed back into Capricorn. So this new moon, on some level, is somewhat of a culmination of a lot of what we have been experiencing this year. The sextile that it creates, I would look at it as an Aquarius sextile. These planets move slower than the sun and the moon. The sun and the moon are approaching them. We will have we will have a new moon in Capricorn, I mean in Sagittarius, then we'll have a new moon in Capricorn. So the sun and the moon are moving closer to these. This is an opportunity for us to have some change, and that change is a change in which we are moving in the direction of working for the common good. So there's a lot of energy for that. So that inspiring speech by Bernie Sanders and that inspiring speech by Joe Biden, okay? They're like your favorite uncles, right? That come to Christmas and you sit at their feet and you listen to them talking about their life and their visions and all that stuff. I mean, it's pretty cool, right? Um uh, that that energy, that inspirational energy is a way forward, and we are moving into uh new frequency levels. Now, not everybody is moving up. Some people, there's this, what seems to me like this precipitation. If you want to stay attached to, and it doesn't matter if you're what side of the political divide you're on, because it's not about that, it's vibrational. And so if you want to hold on to your point of view and your opinion and all of this, and this is right and he's the um and not move into more of a heart-centered place, um you, to a certain extent, will be left behind in this frequency change that we're experiencing. We need to be aligned, uh, third eye to heart to root, because we have to ground it all too. We have to ground it all. Now, um, there's a couple of other things in this chart. And of course, the eighth house and the 10th house. The eighth house is a relationship house. It's where we share our bodies. It's where we share our feelings. It's where we share our money. So this is about the collective, our collective resources. And this is how the government spends those collective resources to a certain extent, or the people in charge. But this sextile that these planets make are a push for more democratic, as it were, energies. So, and of course, there's all this talk of coups and this, that, and the other thing, and power grabs, and trying to take all the power. I guess it's possible, although I did a reading on it and it said no, and I have to say no to that as well. I agree. I think it's no. Because ultimately we're moving in the direction of progress. We're not moving backwards, we're moving forward. Um, One of the other extraordinarily interesting things about this time, not even just this new moon, but this time, is that we have Mars in the sign of its rulership. We have Venus in the sign of her rulership. We have Saturn in the sign of his rulership. And we have Neptune in the sign of its rulership. So there's a lot of planets that are located in the signs that they naturally rule, which makes things on a certain level very cut and dry, interestingly enough. Um, and of course, if we look at the nodes of the moon, which are not necessarily connected to this, except that the south node is somewhere around the midpoint of this sextile, the south node in Sagittarius. The south node is about letting go. What do we need to let go of? And we will be having the full moon of that. That's part of this lunation cycle that starts with this new moon in Scorpio. So in 14 days, we're going to have a full moon. Is actually going to be an eclipse. I think it's at 10 degrees. It's 10 degrees of, the sun is at 10 of Sag and the moon is at 10 of Gemini. And then the next new moon, which is at 20, is it 23 of Sag? I think it's 23 of Sag. Yes. Is an eclipse, a new moon eclipse. So we are putting our foot into eclipse season with this, even though this is not an eclipse. we're moving into that energy of eclipse season, and eclipses are always a time of an opportunity for change. It's as if we move through a doorway. Okay, hopefully that won't disturb me. Okay. All right. So the other thing that's going on in this is that we have some that we have the nodes of the moon, as I said, south node letting go of excuse me one second. Okay, guys, sorry, I'm back. Okay, a couple of other things. We have the south node, of course, in Sagittarius, requiring us to let go of perhaps old beliefs that we have that no longer serve, old opinions, and with the north node in Gemini, requiring us to look at the facts, ma'am, the facts. Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. What is square the nodes is Neptune in Pisces. Neptune is associated with pandemics. Neptune is an energy of dissolution of boundaries. And if there's one thing that a virus can do is it doesn't matter who you are, you can still get affected by it. Of course, your level of health matters. And of course, people have different levels of health depending on lifestyle and how much and how prosperous or not prosperous they are. So there's that. And then, of course, some genetic predisposition, perhaps. But with Neptune squaring the nodes, it's very difficult to a certain extent to see where we're going. There is an energy of obfuscation here, but there's also the energy of the morphic field, and you can utilize your imagination in both positive and negative ways. And I would suggest utilize your imagination for the world that you want to see, but that has to be based to a certain extent on letting go of old opinions and old beliefs that are false or that have been proven false, and then moving in the direction of facts. So your imaginings influence, but it influences. While you can influence, you still have to take into consideration what's real, because Saturn is in its sign of the sign of reality, right? The sign of reality. We also have a trine, where is it here? Between Juno and excuse me, and Neptune. And this is a trine of understanding. It's a Sagittarius side trine. So it's an opportunity for us to learn from each other, learn through our relationships. And this is an opportunity to do that in this new moon. And of course, Scorpio being a sign of relationship. So these are all considerations that we need to have at this new moon. All right, so let's take a look at this new moon. In the chart of the United States, this new moon occurs in the third house. The third house is the house of media. It's the house of communication. It's the house of siblings. It's the house of local neighborhoods. And we have all the Capricorn planets in the fifth house. And let's see, and we have Mars in the eighth house here. And this Mars in the eighth house can be a bit daunting, and we need to be extra careful at this time because of this, because Mars retrograde now going direct, there can be a lot of built up frustration and a lot of built up anger. And the eighth house is the house of death and rebirth. So we do need to know that this can go sideways pretty quickly. And so we need to be very aware of our surroundings, and perhaps best to stay close to home at this time. All right, so here we have the this new moon relocated to Greenwich, England. And we can see that this new moon is in the first house for England. Okay, Greenwich, England. This has to do more with the world, because Greenwich is the 0 point, and so this is how the world. This is more of like a worldly map, and so this is a reinvention of who we are. The first house, um, the power of our thoughts, the power of the media. We have to look at the nature of health and welfare. We have Mars here, so there's a lot of energy for helping. If you So there's some vaccines coming out, there, things like that. That's very helpful. Venus in that 12th house, compassion in our relationships uh, all over the world. And I also did Australia, and this new moon is actually happening on the 15th in Australia at 4:07 p.m. And for Australia, the new moon falls in the house. It's almost like a natural chart falls in the Scorpio house. So a lot of what I said um, initially would apply to Australia. So this is a very, very potent time. So I think the next thing I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is I am going to pull some cards on this. So hold on one second. Hi, everyone. I'm back. I take care of something in the house. All right. So let's do a card read on this this new moon in Scorpio, and I'm going to use my old witch's tarot, well loved tarot from years and years ago. I don't think that they make this anymore. I should have probably bought a couple of decks back then. All right, let's see, cards for the new moon. Cards for the new moon. All right. New moon in Scorpio. Oops. New moon in Scorpio. Card reading for the new moon in Scorpio. All right, let's see what we got. Yeah, okay. So this is the 5 of Pentacles. Where do we find ourselves? We find ourselves in a very, very difficult position. It is a we are here. We are trying to move these boulders out of the way. We've kind of put ourselves in a very narrow place, and I think the more the less narrow, or no, the more narrow the path, the easier it is to obstruct. The easier it is to obstruct. Of course, the 5 of Pentacles also deals with the issues of finances. And we find ourselves in a very sort of difficult position that's going to take a lot of heavy lifting. So let's see what's challenging that. That's a pretty challenging card on its own. Okay, and so this is the 3 of Pentacles. In this deck, it is about finding the work that you love, finding the work that you love. And so the challenge for us all is to be fertile, okay, to be fertile. And we can see that this woman is well pregnant, and she's weaving this beautiful carpet. And she's actually, her eyes are closed. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can pull this back. Here we go. Her eyes are closed, almost as if she's doing it, um, that been doing it for so long that she doesn't really, it's like part of her. It's like part of her. And so I think what these cards are talking about, just these two cards together, is instead of struggling doing what has been narrowly prescribed for you to do, your challenge is to find the thing that is so natural to you that you can let it flow, that you can let it flow. And the Three of Pentacles is generally a very good card when it comes to finances. So if you find yourself in a situation where perhaps you're not making the same kind of money that you were making before, for whatever reason, it could be COVID related, it could be not COVID related, then the challenge is, how do I find something that is aligned with my talents, right? With my abilities, with what it is that I want to bring into the world, right? Let's see what the root of this is. And we have the Prince of Cups. This is an emotion on the road. So this something is coming. Perhaps good news is coming. Okay, and this, I would put these two together. This is, I think this is the eight. God, it's so, Eight of Wands. This is taking what you know and walking with it in the energy of service, in the energy of love, cups, in the energy of offering the cup to someone. See what's in the past. We have the World card. There has been an ending. Okay. It's interesting because this is a Saturn card, as is the Three of Pentacles, a Saturn card. This is the lower Saturn. This is the Saturn that sits on the path between Isad Foundation and Malkuth, the kingdom. And the Three of Pentacles is in Bina, which is spiritual Saturn. It's the divine feminine. And so something has come to an end just recently in the past, maybe not so recently for some people. In the sky, we have the King of Cups. Now, some people would see this as Joe Biden, which is possible. He is a Scorpio, and this new moon does make a conjunction to his, I want to say Mercury. I think it's his Mercury. Or is it his Mars? No, it's his Mercury. Let's see what else comes up with this. Oops. Okay. Taking action. Taking action. So there is this energy of the kings in this deck. The kings are the idea, right? It's the winter time. It's the seed that's germinating under the snow. And the two of swords is about taking a step forward, but this person is not on solid ground. So there's a little bit of a sense of like taking a step forward, but being off balance as you do it. So there's a little bit of start, stop, not really sure energy here. And that could also be Joe Biden, quite frankly, because he wants to start. He wants to start with the transition, and he's being obstructed in that. All right. And then we have the Four of Pentacles as the immediate future. So this is about security, stability. You see these two children playing outside this very stately home. They're behind a fence. This is really about staying close to home, staying close to home. I saw that in the chart as well. For those of us who are lucky enough to have homes, not everybody's that lucky. And to perhaps not overextend yourself, not overextend yourself. How it's seen from the outside, the first steps in healing. Let's pull another card with that. For manifestation. For manifestation. There's a lot of earth and water in this so far, in this pull. And earth is, of course, our physical body, and water is our emotional body. And this is, it's pointing to that everything that we do, there needs to be an emotional component, sort of an emotionally fulfilling component to it. Let's see the domestic situation. This is, I always see this card as creating our own reality. This is a very creative card. It's the Seven of Pentacles in this deck. Visualizing what you want to create. Not of Pentacles. Hopes and fears, seeing patterns, seeing the patterns. This is Six of Wands in this deck. Seeing patterns. And the outcome, laying down our swords, enjoying each other's company, music. Yeah, in this deck, the Seven of Swords is really about laying down your swords and spending time with people, doing things that lift the spirits. Now, we're in the middle of a pandemic, so that could be hard for people. You can still connect. You can still connect even if you can't be in the same room with them. Find ways of connecting creatively as we hunker down, because this really is a time of hunkering down, quite frankly. And then we have the Ace of Pentacles coming up after that. So new beginnings, new ways of manifesting. The Two of Cups. If there is something that you desire, if there's something that will connect you and fill your heart, this card says do it. It might be a hard climb, it might be difficult, but happiness is within your reach. It's just going to take a lot of effort with that card there. Okay. All right, no major arcanas. And then we have the Four of Wands underneath. And this is a card of the elders. The elders, they're at a crossroads and they're taking the middle way, and they're divinely inspired by spirit. And so this really is about walking the middle way. This is less about separation and more about coming together and walking a path together. So whatever it is that you can do to foster that sense of togetherness. One of the things that I did myself after Joe Biden won the presidency, won the election, is there are some people that, there are very few people that I'm still connected with that actually support Donald Trump. I have family, of course, like we all do, who supports them. I don't talk to them about it because they're my family. And once Donald Trump is, in the ground, they'll still be my family. And I didn't want that to get in the way of my feelings for my family. So I've pretty much stepped back from having any kind of interactions with family when it comes to politics like that. Of course, the family who agrees with me, I'm more than happy to talk to. But the ones that don't, I don't bring it up. However, there are some friends that I have and that I know, and people that I know. And one of the first things I did was reach out to them, but it had nothing to do with politics. It was just, a friendly something. How's the kids? Are you all right? And I think that's the thing. I mean, like, I feel like that needs to be done. Um, Keep the politics out of it and reach out and make connections. Um, because unity is the way forward. And the new moon in Scorpio is about unifying soul and personality, but it's also about unifying each of us, finding the commonalities, the things that make us similar instead of the things that make us different. And I think that that's a good way to sort of approach this new moon. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. I know it was long. I apologize for the length. Have a great day. Have a beautiful new moon. Please stay safe. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Be careful out there. There's a million cases in Texas. There's now a million cases in California. We're getting better at treating it because we understand it better. But the hospital system is not made for this kind of stress. And that's really the danger of it. It's not as much, of course, the virus itself is dangerous. Cheers, everybody. It's almost dinner time. We're having raviolis with homemade sauce. So I'm just getting ready for dinner. But so we're learning more about it, and we will have a vaccine. Will people trust it? Enough people probably to make a difference. There'll be some of them. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't get a flu shot. I have never gotten a flu shot. And if I don't have to get a flu shot ever, that's fine with me. I'm okay with not getting a flu shot. This is a little different though. This is a little different. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so we're getting better at treating it. But again, the system can't maintain and can't hold it. And it'll be very interesting to see when we're on the other side of this, what people are going to do with the medical bills that they're getting from this, because some people have insurance, but not everybody does. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens beyond that. But everything is changing, folks. The Aquarian age is here, guys. It's here. And we're going to have to start acting like it. All right. Much love. Take care.